ultimately, to some degree, it depends on context. And so first off, people more recently have been asking about just like the process of how they make stevia or stevia extract and the sweeteners and stuff that you buy in the store. And in most of those processes, especially big commercial grade, they are typically adding some chemicals in there to one turn it white because typically it should actually be green, and they're also some of them add chemicals to mitigate that bitter aftertaste that you typically get with stevia extract, and those chemicals may actually be why if you are somebody who reacts to stevia or doesn't tolerate stevia well, especially from a gut perspective, that's kind of common. If somebody doesn't respond well to stevia, it's usually that they feel some gut irritation with it. And if you are one of those people, it may just simply be those chemicals that they add. Obviously, they're taking those chemicals out after they've extracted and turned it white and stuff like that. But there's still going to be somewhat of a residue there, and as long as there's not more than half a gram in the um, in the actual ingredients, they don't have to put those chemicals or those things on the label. So you may not even know that they're there. So first things first, if you are one of those people that reacts to it, then maybe getting a extract or a powder form that is actually green, because then okay, it's probably a lot less processed. Um, and then at the same time, you could try making it yourself. There's a ton of different YouTube videos out there that show you how to make it yourself by buying the actual plant itself, and doing that extraction process is actually pretty simple. But at the same time, stevia itself um, isn't necessarily without its concerns or drawbacks. I mean, there are studies out there showing that it can disrupt the gut microbiome and basically how those bugs communicate with each other. It's called quorum sensing, which is just basically how those microbes communicate to each other. There's been studies that show that it disrupts that communication to some degree, and it's also some of a potential endocrine disruptor. So there's been studies that have shown that the stevia glycosides, which is basically the sweet part of the plant, that actually they have a steroid type structure. So they look a lot like those steroid hormones. And there's a study done that scientists exposed sperm cells to those compounds, and it was found to induce an agonistic. So a um, agonistic basically means it acts like progesterone on the sperm cell. Um, so that is a possibility, but I would say to some degree, one, you're going to have varying effects between person and person, and at the same time, you're probably going to need a decent amount of that to have a big response. Also, it does make foods more palatable, meaning they taste a lot better and much more sweet, and that in and of itself can make you want to eat more food. And so, I would say in the discussion of is it better to have something like stevia or something like sugar, I would say in the vast majority of cases, stevia is better than just having the straight sugar. Um, However, if you're having stevia with everything, because of that, then that can disrupt those things we talked about before, but also it can also still make those foods very palatable and therefore still lead to overeating. And because it does affect and kind of disrupt to some degree the dopamine systems in the brain, which is kind of your reward centers, and still cause some of those similar issues to sugar, but definitely not to the same degree. And at the same time, you're not getting the same blood sugar spikes and stuff like that that you get with sugar. Um, and so again, context matters with that. So if you're overweight, you're trying to lose weight, I would say obviously stevia is much better than sugar, and can get you on that right pathway. However, if you're having trouble if you are consuming stevia or sweeteners in general, low calorie or no calorie sweeteners, and still having trouble with losing weight, then I would say try cutting out the stevia and just eating those whole foods. And oftentimes you'll get satiated much easier, which then means you're eating less without even really trying, and therefore typically easier to lose weight from that standpoint. Um, at the same time, if you are feeling like you are getting some irritation from that stevia, like I said, first trying the green stevia extract, and then at the same time, maybe trying to make it on your own, and ultimately, I think to some degree, let's say you're not trying to lose weight, you're just trying to maintain and or just trying to make things taste a little better, because maybe you're switching over to a harsher diet and everything tastes pretty bland to you. Stevia can be helpful for that. Like I said, if you overdo it, there can be some consequences to that. So it's just one of those things to kind of pay attention to if things start changing, whether it be gut wise or hormone wise or anything like that. Just be aware that stevia can affect those systems. And I think dose does matter to some degree, in the sense of if you're having it here and there, it's probably not a huge deal. But if you're having it daily and in decent quantities, then it might be something to kind of back off on, and just have in more moderation. Definitely, by no means do I think stevia is the devil and that nobody should eat it. But it is something that I think you can still overconsume and abuse to some degree and have some consequences because of that. So, so that's kind of my spiel on stevia. It can be great in some contexts, not so great in other contexts, and in a lot of contexts, it's relatively benign, especially relative to a lot of other things out there. So I don't think we necessarily need to get our pitchforks out and go after stevia too much. But it is something to be aware of.